What happens when royal privilege collides with a host who refuses to back down? In just 38 seconds, one comment would turn a simple interview into television chaos that nobody saw coming. Piers Morgan sat across from Prince Harry in the studio, ready for what he thought would be a straightforward conversation. The cameras were rolling, the audience was quiet, and everything seemed normal. But normal was about to become a distant memory. "So, Harry, let's talk about your recent claims," Piers began, his voice calm and professional. "You've made some serious accusations. I think the viewers deserve to hear the truth." Harry shifted in his seat, already looking uncomfortable. "I've been nothing but honest, Piers. Perhaps that makes some people uncomfortable." "Honest?" Piers leaned forward slightly. "Or selective with the facts? Because from where I'm sitting, there seem to be quite a few holes in your story." The tension in the room started to build. You could feel it. Harry's jaw tightened, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair. "I don't appreciate what you're insinuating," Harry said, his voice taking on an edge. "I'm not insinuating anything," Piers replied, keeping his composure. "I'm asking direct questions. That's what journalists do. That's what this show is about. Accountability." Harry laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Accountability? That's rich coming from someone like you." "Someone like me?" Piers raised an eyebrow. "And what exactly does that mean?" "You know exactly what it means," Harry shot back. "You sit here on your high horse, judging everyone else, but you're no saint. You've made your share of mistakes." Piers didn't flinch. "This isn't about me, Harry. This is about you. You came on this show. You agreed to this interview. If you can't handle tough questions, perhaps you shouldn't have agreed to sit in that chair." The audience was dead silent now. Every eye was glued to the two men on stage. This was not going the way anyone expected. "I can handle tough questions," Harry insisted, his voice rising. "What I can't handle is being ambushed by someone who clearly has an agenda." "An agenda?" Piers smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "My agenda is the truth. Always has been. If that threatens you, that says more about your position than mine." Harry stood up abruptly, and the audience gasped. "You want the truth? Fine. The truth is, you're a bully. You always have been. You build your entire career on tearing people down." Piers remained seated, calm as ever. "Sit down, Harry. You're making a scene." "No," Harry said firmly, pointing at Piers. "I'm done. I'm done with this charade. I'm done with you pretending to be some champion of honesty when really you're just a tabloid hack with a television show." The words hung in the air like smoke. Piers slowly stood up, matching Harry's energy, but with controlled precision. "A tabloid hack?" Piers repeated, his voice steady. "I've interviewed prime ministers, presidents, celebrities, and yes, even royals. I've won awards. I've broken stories. And I've done it all by asking the questions other people are too afraid to ask. If that makes me a hack in your eyes, I'll wear that badge proudly." Harry's face was red now, his composure completely gone. "You think you're so important. You think everyone cares what you have to say. But you're nothing. You're absolutely nothing." The audience erupted in murmurs. This was crossing a line, and everyone knew it. Piers took a step closer, still maintaining his professional demeanor despite the personal attack. "I may be nothing in your world, Harry, but in this studio, on this show, I'm the host, and I will not be spoken to like that. Not by you, not by anyone." "Then maybe I shouldn't be here," Harry snapped. "Maybe you shouldn't," Piers agreed. "If you can't have a civil conversation, if you can't answer simple questions without throwing a tantrum, then perhaps this isn't the right platform for you." Harry's eyes widened. "A tantrum? You think this is a tantrum? You have no idea what real pressure is. You sit here in your comfortable studio, playing pretend journalist, while some of us actually have to live with real consequences. Real consequences? Piers fired back. You mean the consequences of your own choices? The consequences of going on international television and making claims you can't back up? Those consequences? I can back up everything I've said, Harry insisted, his voice shaking with anger now. Then do it, Piers challenged. Right here, right now. Back it up. Give me facts. Give me evidence. Give me something other than emotional appeals and victim narratives. Harry pointed at Piers again, his hand trembling. I don't have to prove anything to you. Who do you think you are? I'm the person asking the questions millions of people want answered, Piers said calmly. I'm the person who isn't afraid to push back when something doesn't add up. And right now, Harry, a lot of what you're saying doesn't add up. This is unbelievable, Harry muttered, pacing back and forth now. This is absolutely unbelievable. What's unbelievable, Piers continued, is that you thought you could come on this show, make sweeping accusations, play the victim card, and not get challenged on any of it. That's not how this works. Harry stopped pacing and turned to face Piers directly. You're twisting everything I say. I'm not twisting anything, Piers countered. I'm using your own words, your own statements. If they sound bad when played back to you, maybe that's something you need to reflect on. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The camera operators didn't know where to point. The producers were frozen in the control room. This was television gold, but it was also rapidly spiraling out of control. I want to leave, Harry announced suddenly. Piers crossed his arms. The door's right there. Nobody's stopping. You! You're insufferable, Harry said, his voice dripping with contempt. Absolutely insufferable. And yet you agreed to be here, Piers reminded him. You wanted this platform. You wanted this audience. But you only wanted it on your terms. Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but that's not how journalism works. Harry started walking toward the edge of the stage. The cameras followed him. The audience didn't know whether to stay quiet or react. Walking away, are we? Piers called after him. That seems to be a pattern with you. Harry spun around, fury in his eyes. What did you just say? You heard me, Piers said, not backing down an inch. When things get tough, when questions get hard, you walk away. You walked away from your duties. You walked away from your family. And now you're walking away from this interview because you don't like being held accountable. How dare you, Harry breathed, his voice low and dangerous. How dare you speak about things you know nothing about? I know what you've said publicly, Piers responded. I know what you've put out there for the world to consume. And I know that when given the opportunity to explain yourself, to clarify, to provide context, you'd rather throw insults and storm off. Harry took a step back toward Piers, and security subtly moved closer, just in case. You're a disgrace to journalism. And you're a disgrace to that title you carry, Piers shot back without hesitation. The audience gasped again, louder this time. This was beyond anything they'd expected. This was personal now. Harry's hands were shaking. I've given up everything. Everything. And people like you still aren't satisfied. What more do you want from me? The truth would be nice, Piers said simply. Just the truth. No spin. No manipulation. No playing to the cameras. Just honest answers to honest questions. Is that really too much to ask? From you? Yes, Harry snapped. Because you don't want truth. You want drama. You want headlines. You want to make yourself look important by tearing me down. Piers shook his head slowly. If you truly believe that, then you're more deluded than I thought. I'm doing my job, Harry. Something you seem to have forgotten how to do. That was it. That was the final straw. Harry's face turned a deeper shade of red, and he pointed at Piers one more time with a shaking finger. You are vile, Harry said, his voice cracking slightly. You are a vile, disgusting human being, and I will not stand here and be disrespected by someone like you. Piers smiled coldly. Then leave. Nobody's forcing you to stay. But know this. Walking out of this interview only proves my point. It proves you can't handle scrutiny. It proves you only want softball questions and sympathetic nods. That's not what this show offers. Harry looked around the studio, at the cameras, at the audience, at the crew. Everyone was staring at him, waiting to see what he would do next. This show is a joke, Harry declared loudly, and you're the punchline. With that, he ripped off his microphone, the pack clattering to the floor, and started walking toward the exit. His footsteps echoed in the silent studio. Piers called after him, his voice carrying across the room. Running away again, Harry? Seems to be what you do best. Harry didn't turn around. He didn't respond. He just kept walking. His shoulders tense, his fists clenched at his sides. Ladies and gentlemen, Piers said, turning to address the camera directly, his composure intact despite everything that had just happened. What you've just witnessed is what happens when entitlement meets accountability. Some people simply cannot handle being questioned. Harry reached the studio door and pushed through it forcefully. The door swung shut behind him with a loud bang that reverberated through the entire space. Piers stood alone on the stage now, straightening his jacket and running a hand through his hair. The audience slowly began to react, some applauding, others sitting in stunned silence. I invited him here for a conversation, Piers continued, addressing the viewers at home. I asked him questions that I believe the public deserves answers to. Questions about his claims, his accusations, his version of events. Instead of answering those questions, instead of engaging in meaningful dialogue, he chose to attack me personally and then walk out. The camera zoomed in on Piers's face. He looked directly into the lens, his expression serious and unwavering. This is why we do what we do, he said. This is why tough questions matter. Because when someone can't answer them, when someone resorts to name-calling and tantrums instead of facts and reason, it tells you everything you need to know. Backstage, the sounds of commotion could be heard. Voices were raised. Doors were slamming. Harry was clearly not happy, and he was making sure everyone knew it. Piers ignored the background noise and continued speaking to the camera. I want to be clear about something. I have nothing personal against Harry. I don't hate him, despite what he might think. But I do have a problem with hypocrisy. I have a problem with people who demand respect, but show none in return. I have a problem with individuals who want to control the narrative without being willing to defend it. The audience was hanging on every word now. This was the moment they'd talk about for weeks, months, maybe even years. He called me a bully, Piers said, a slight smile playing at his lips. But ask yourself this. Who was doing the name calling? Who was making personal attacks? Who refused to engage with the actual substance of the conversation? It wasn't me. More noise from backstage. It sounded like Harry was demanding something, though the words weren't clear enough to make out. Some might say I was too hard on him, Piers acknowledged. Some might say I should have gone easier, been more gentle. But here's the thing. I treat everyone the same. Celebrity, royal, politician, athlete. It doesn't matter. If you come on this show, you're going to get real questions. You're going to be challenged. That's the deal. That's always been the deal. The studio door burst open again, and for a moment, it looked like Harry might be coming back. But it was just a member of the production team, looking flustered and confused. Piers glanced at the door, then back at the camera. I wonder if he expected me to just agree with everything he said, to nod along, to sympathize, to let him tell his story without any pushback. Maybe that's what he's gotten used to. Maybe that's what he expects from everyone now. He walked slowly across the stage, the camera following his movement. But that's not journalism. That's PR. That's propaganda. And I'm not in that business. The audience began to applaud again, this time more enthusiastically. They appreciated Piers' stance, his refusal to be intimidated or bullied into submission. Harry talked about respect, Piers continued. He said I was disrespectful, but respect is earned, not demanded, and respect goes both ways. You can't walk into someone's studio, insult them, call them names, question their integrity, and then expect to be treated with kid gloves. Another sound from backstage, this one sounding like a door slamming shut, followed by the faint noise of a car engine starting. Harry was leaving the building entirely. "And there he goes," Piers said, hearing the same sounds. "Off into the night, convinced he's the victim in all of this, convinced that I'm the villain. But viewers at home, you saw what happened. You heard what was said. You can make your own judgments." He returned to his chair and sat down, the camera adjusting to frame him properly. This is what happens when you live in a bubble. When you're surrounded by people who only tell you what you want to hear. When you're never challenged, never questioned, never held accountable. You forget how to have a real conversation. You forget that not everyone is going to treat you like you're special. The audience was quieter now, listening intently to every word. I've been doing this job for a long time. I've interviewed thousands of people. Some of them liked me. Some of them hated me. But they all knew what they were getting into. They all knew I wasn't going to throw them softball questions. Harry knew that too. He just thought he'd be the exception. Piers looked down at his notes, which were scattered across the desk. The interview had derailed so quickly that he'd barely gotten through his first page of questions. "We had so much more to discuss," he said, gesturing at the papers. "Real questions about real issues. Questions that people genuinely want answered. But we never got there because Harry couldn't get past the first challenge, the first moment of pushback." He looked back up at the camera, his expression softening slightly. "Look, I understand that Harry's been through a lot. I understand he feels he's been treated unfairly. But you know what? A lot of people have been through a lot. A lot of people feel they've been treated unfairly. The difference is, most of them don't have the platform he has. Most of them don't have the resources he has. Most of them don't have the luxury of walking off a television set when things get uncomfortable." The studio was settling back into its normal rhythm now. The initial shock was wearing off, replaced by a sense of understanding about what had just transpired. "I hope he watches this back," Piers said thoughtfully. "I hope he sees his own behavior and reflects on it. Because if he truly wants to be taken seriously, if he truly wants people to listen to his message, he needs to be able to defend it. He needs to be able to engage with criticism. He needs to be able to have difficult conversations without losing his temper." A producer appeared at the edge of the stage, giving Piers a signal. They needed to wrap up. "We're almost out of time," Piers announced. "But before we go, I want to say this directly to Harry, in case he's watching. The offer stands. Come back anytime. Sit in that chair again. Let's have the conversation we should have had today. But come prepared. Come ready to answer questions. Come ready to engage in actual dialogue, rather than just expecting everyone to accept your version of events without question." He stood up from his chair one final time, buttoning his jacket. Because that's what adults do. That's what mature, responsible people do. They face their critics. They defend their positions. They don't run away. The lights in the studio began to dim slightly, signaling the end of the broadcast. "Ladies and gentlemen, that's our show. Not quite what we planned, but certainly memorable. I'm Piers Morgan. Thank you for watching. And Harry, if you're out there, the door is always open. Just leave the attitude outside next time." The camera held on Piers for a few more seconds before slowly fading to black. The audience erupted in applause, standing and clapping as the reality of what they'd just witnessed fully sank in. This wasn't just television. This was a moment. A genuine, unscripted moment where two strong personalities collided and only one remained standing. Piers waved to the audience, thanking them for their presence and their support. He knew this episode would generate headlines, would spark debates, would be dissected and analyzed for days to come. But he also knew he'd done his job. He'd asked the tough questions. He'd stood his ground. He'd refused to be bullied or intimidated. As the audience filed out and the crew began breaking down the set, Piers sat back down in his chair, alone on the stage. He looked at the empty chair across from him, the chair Harry had occupied just minutes ago. The chair Harry had abandoned when things got difficult. A production assistant approached with a bottle of water. Piers thanked her and took a long drink, finally allowing himself to relax slightly. The adrenaline was still coursing through his veins, the intensity of the confrontation still fresh in his mind. He thought about everything Harry had said, the accusations, the insults, the personal attacks. Part of him wondered if he should have handled it differently. But no, he decided. He'd done exactly what needed to be done. He'd maintained his professionalism even when Harry had lost his. He'd stayed calm even when Harry had become angry. He'd stuck to his principles even when it would have been easier to back down. That's what separated good journalists from bad ones. Good journalists didn't cave under pressure. They didn't soften their questions to make guests feel comfortable. They asked what needed to be asked, regardless of who was sitting across from them. The studio was nearly empty now. Just a few crew members remained, quietly going about their work. Piers stood up and made his way toward his dressing room, replaying the interview in his head. Every word, every gesture, every moment of escalating tension. He knew people would have opinions. Some would say he was too harsh. Some would say he was exactly right. Some would defend Harry. Some would criticize him. That was fine. That was the nature of television, especially this kind of television. You couldn't please everyone, and trying to do so would only water down the content. In his dressing room, Piers sat down and loosened his tie. His phone was already buzzing with messages, notifications, calls. Everyone wanted to know what had happened. Everyone had an opinion. But for now, he just wanted a moment of quiet. He'd stood his ground today. He'd refused to be intimidated by a title or a famous last name. He'd treated Harry exactly as he would treat anyone else, with tough questions and fair scrutiny. If that made him unpopular in some circles, so be it. Popularity had never been his goal. Truth had. Accountability had. Real journalism had. The door to his dressing room opened, and his producer stepped inside. They talked briefly about the episode, about the reactions already flooding in, about what this meant for the show. It was unprecedented television. Raw, unfiltered, genuine conflict playing out in real time. But beneath all the analysis, beneath all the discussion of ratings and reactions, there was a simpler truth. Harry had come on the show expecting special treatment. He'd expected his status to shield him from tough questions. He'd expected Piers to bow and scrape and agree with everything he said. Instead, he'd gotten a journalist who treated him like everyone else, and he couldn't handle it. So he'd lashed out, thrown insults, and ultimately walked away. He'd proven every point Piers had been trying to make about entitlement, about accountability, about the difference between wanting to be heard and being willing to defend what you say. The lights in the studio were finally turned off completely. Another broadcast was done, another chapter written, and somewhere out there, Harry was probably still fuming, still convinced he'd been wronged, still believing he was the victim. But the cameras didn't lie. The footage would speak for itself, and people would remember this night not as the night Piers Morgan was too tough on a guest, but as the night a guest couldn't handle being treated like everyone else.